The detective used to tell this story from the outside. He would watch himself, watch the city, trying to maintain some distance from the rot. But down here, in the undergrid, that distance was gone. There was only the cold steel, the static, and a truth no one wanted to hear. The air in the lower levels was thick, tasting heavily of ozone, rusted copper, and broken promises. He kept his collar turned up, not against the cold, but to hide the fact that he was the only soul in this entire sector who hadn't sold his eyes for better optics. His natural eyes were tired, bloodshot from the lack of sleep, but they saw things the digital upgrades missed. He moved through the shadows like a ghost among ghosts. He checked the pulse on his scanner. The needle tracking the Onyx Core was trembling violently, dragging him deeper into the belly of the city, where the neon lights couldn't reach. Every single step he took on the rusted metal grates echoed like a gunshot in an empty library. He wasn't just looking for a file anymore. He was looking for a ghost. And if you wanted to find a ghost in a place like this, you didn't go to the authorities. You went to Vex. Vex's shop was tucked away inside a ventilation shaft behind a defunct power station. It didn't have a sign, and it didn't need one. To find it, a person just had to follow the static bleeding through the comm lines. The deeper the detective went, the quieter the upper city became. There was no sound of rain here, no distant sirens. There was only the sound of his own heavy breathing and his boots clicking against the metal floor. He stepped inside the dim room. The space was illuminated entirely by 1,000 flickering memory drives. Hues of cold blue, sharp violet, and sterile white. They looked like glass jars filled with captured fireflies. The air hummed with the faint, collective vibration of 1,000,000 forgotten conversations. And there she sat, Vex. She remained motionless in the dark, her custom optic implants glowing and flickering as she processed the stolen lives of 1,000 strangers. She didn't look up when the detective walked in. She just kept tapping away at an ancient console that looked like it belonged in a history museum. "You're late, detective," she said. Her voice was like dry leaves scraping across pavement, raspy, thin, and entirely devoid of warmth. Or perhaps I'm early. Time is fluid when you're standing in a room full of other people's yesterdays. The detective didn't smile. He told her plainly that he didn't have time for her philosophy. He needed a location. The Onyx Core. He reminded her that the data package had passed through this exact sector 3 cycles ago. She stopped typing then. She turned her head slowly to look at him, and for a second he felt a chill go down his spine. It felt like she was looking right through his skull, reading his personal history like cheap lines of code. "The core," she whispered, her voice dropping an octave. "That's a heavy item. People kill to have it, and they kill to forget they ever saw it. But you're just curious. And curiosity is a slow poison, detective." The detective didn't blink. He looked at her dead in her glowing eyes and told her he hadn't come down here to debate his health. He came for the location. A thin, brittle smile crossed Bex's face. "Credits are digital dust down here," she said, her fingers dancing idly over a blank drive. "I don't want your money. I deal in organic currency. I need a memory, a real one, sharp, painful, preferably one you haven't dared to touch in a decade." She didn't want a generic piece of data. She wanted the specific day he walked away from the Force. She wanted to know exactly what he had witnessed inside that high security vault that made him turn in his badge and choose the rain. The detective hesitated. He told her, "You're asking for the only thing that keeps me honest." Vex leaned back into her seat, the metal frame creaking loudly in the heavy silence. "I'm asking for the truth. You're holding onto it like a lead weight, and it's dragging you down into the muck. Give it to me, and you'll be free. Isn't that what you came down here for anyway? To forget?" The detective finally sat in the extraction chair. The metal wire felt freezing against the back of his neck. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and reached deep into the dark corners of his own mind. He dragged that day into the light. The vault, the screeching sound of the alarm, the absolute terror on the director's face when he realized his lead detective had seen the truth about the neon ice. It felt like a piece of his soul was being peeled away with a rusty scalpel. He could feel it leaving his head, the vibrant colors, the paralyzing fear, the absolute truth. It was all being digitized, turning into cold binary code. When he finally opened his eyes, the room looked different. It felt emptier. Vex handed him a small, warm data drive. "Sector 4, she said quietly. "The server farm at the edge of the dark zone." The detective stood up, but his chest felt completely hollow. He knew exactly where he had to go next, but for a terrifying second, he couldn't remember why he was hunting them in the first place. He just knew that when he stepped back out into the pouring rain, his shoulders felt lighter, and down here, that was the most dangerous thing of all. The rain outside Vex's lair didn't wash the grime away. It just made it slick. The detective walked with his hands shoved deep into his coat pockets, his fingers tightly gripping the cold edge of the new data drive. The streets of Sector 4 were nearly empty, save for the occasional low-tier drone hovering aimlessly above the puddles, its optical lens flickering a dull, rhythmic amber. He stopped beneath the buzzing neon sign of a broken noodle kiosk, looking down at his own reflection in the oily water. He knew he was looking at a man named a detective, a man who had a mission, but the emotional thread that tied him to the case had been cleanly severed. The anger that usually fueled his stride through these slums was gone, replaced by a smooth, terrifying calm. He pulled the drive from his pocket and stared at the glowing serial number. Vex had given him the coordinates to the server farm at the edge of the dark zone, but she had stolen the Y. He could remember the cold facts, the names, the dates, the blueprints of the high security vault, but the memory of feeling the betrayal was entirely missing. It was like reading a biography of a stranger. He realized then the true cruelty of the undergrid. It didn't just take your life, it made you complicit in your own forgetting. He pulled his collar tighter against the humid chill. forced his boots forward into the dark zone, and wondered how many more pieces of himself he would have to sell before this case was finally closed.